Welcome to Screw the Commute, the entrepreneurial podcast dedicated to getting you out of the car and into the money. With your host, lifelong entrepreneur and multimillionaire, Tom Antion.
Hey everybody, it's Tom here with episode, listen to this, 350 of Screw the Commute podcast. Wow, 350 episodes. How did I do it? I don't know. It seems like only yesterday. Well, podcasting has been so great for my business, especially the way I monetize it. And that's what we're going to talk about today, the podcasting. I want you to get a podcast going and enjoy all the benefits of it. So that's what this episode will be about. And we're having a big celebration sale. So you should be on my email list. If you're not, grab a copy of our automation book, and that'll put you on my email list, and you'll get notice of our big sale to celebrate 350 episodes. Now, I hope you didn't miss episode 349 on intellectual property. I started creating intellectual property, or information products is what we kind of call them, back in the late 80s, and some of it is still selling today, 30 odd years later. It's an asset adding to your net worth, and it's kind of like an insurance policy for your family. You can pass it on to your kids to help them out. You work once and get paid forever. Now, how would you like to hear your own voice here on Screw the Commute? Well, if the show has helped you out at all in your business or given you ideas to help you start a business, we want to hear about it. Visit screwthecommute.com. Look for a little blue sidebar that says send a voicemail. Click on it, talk into your phone or computer, and tell me how the show's helped you out. And also put your website in there so you'll get a big shout out in your own voice on a future episode of Screw the Commute. Now, I mentioned that automation book, that free book that'll get you on my email list and also give you really great tips on how to automate your business. So check it out at screwthecommute.com/automate free. Screwthecommute.com/automate free. And you'll be getting a coupon later today on our big celebration sale for the 350th episode. Hey, while you're at the site, pick up a copy of our podcast app at screwthecommute.com/app, that's APP, where you can put us on your cell phone and tablet and take us with you on the road. All right, our sponsor, like most every week or every year of this podcast, all right, is our school, the Internet Marketing Training Center of Virginia. It's the only licensed, dedicated internet marketing school in the country, but you don't have to live in Virginia. It's a distance learning school, so you can be anywhere you can get an internet connection and go to school to get highly marketable skills in a very short period of time so that you can earn money, whether there's a pandemic or no pandemic, or you just like to stay home and you don't like to commute. Remember, screw the commute. So check it out at imtcva.org. And I'm also going to show you a little bit later how you can get a full scholarship if you're in my mentor program that you can either use yourself or gift to someone. And gifting this to someone, man, it's one of the best legacy gifts you could ever give to somebody, because young people, your nephews, nieces, grandchildren, your own children will have a marketable skill. So no matter what happens, they'll be able to earn a living online. All right, let's get to the main event. I really want you to use a podcast as an important part of your marketing mix. Yeah, I love video, do a lot of video. Yeah, I love email marketing, do tons of email marketing. But one really important thing that email and video can't compete with: audio is the only medium where you can learn from or be entertained by while doing something else. See, webinars and other video require you to stop everything to look at them. Email requires you to stop and read it. But audio, in other words, podcasting, people can listen and fall in love with you and your ideas and buy your products and services while they're doing something else. That's something that's not going to change for a long time until they start embedding chips in your head, which I don't know. Maybe they'll sneak it in with vaccines. I I don't know, but anyway, audio is the bomb. So this episode's about booking guests, doing the recordings, editing, and things like that. Now, if you are just recording information by yourself, you don't have to worry about booking guests. But the reason I don't think this is the best idea is because your guests can help spread your podcast around to people that most likely would never have heard of you. If you just record yourself, then you're pretty much done with what I'm talking about here other than editing. All right. But once you get your file, your audio file, then it would plug into most of what we covered on way back on episode 139 was like behind the scenes on podcasting. So if you're really into this, go back and listen to episode 139. So let's talk about booking guests. The first place you would want to start is by thinking about all the people you know who have information that would make sense for the topic of your show. You might know some fantastically credible people who are really great doing interviews. But if they don't make sense for the topic of your show, then you probably shouldn't have them on, or you should find a way to make it make sense for your audience. So here's an example. Obviously, Screw the Commute is a small business entrepreneurial podcast. Now, if I landed an interview with Ginny Rometty, she's the CEO of IBM, would I take it? You're darn right I would. I don't really know if she has been a corporate person her entire life, which you would think would mean she's not really relatable to small business entrepreneurs, and I shouldn't have her on the show. Well, let's think about that for a minute. IBM and every other big corporation on earth hires contractors for various tasks. These contractors may be, very well, maybe small business entrepreneurs. Wouldn't it be nice to have the perspective of a major CEO tell us what they look for when bringing in contractors for contracts that could make the little guy entrepreneur rich? All right. I think that might be worthwhile to hear her perspective. So when thinking about guests, think about who you know or who someone you know knows that's directly on point when it comes to your topic. But if you do land a big fish that's not on topic, see how you can make it relate to your audience. Now, how do you book them? The first thing I do after determining if they have an interest in being interviewed is ask them if they have a high-quality microphone and headphones or earbuds, and I wait to hear what they say. I kind of push on this point because most people don't know what high quality is. They may have done a go-to meeting or a Zoom or a Skype meeting and people could hear them, so they thought, well, that's good enough. Well, just doing an informational meeting that's not really a show is a far cry from a recorded podcast that will be listened to by hundreds or thousands of people while driving or while they're on the train or exercising. Now, people think I spent $39 on a headset microphone, and they think they have quality, okay? Or they use one of those Apple earbuds with the tiny microphone hanging on a wire, rubbing all over their shoulder, right? Well, you need to either offer to help them get what they need or offer to do a test before you bother booking a time slot for them, or tell them to get back to you when they have the proper setup. Now, plosives, like when you say something with a P in it, go ahead and try it, and you'll feel the air hit your hand. That's like a sledgehammer hitting the microphone. These are some of the bad things that can get on your recording. Yeah, if you hold your hand up in front of your face and say P, you can feel the breath hitting your hand. Like I said, that's like a sledgehammer hitting a good quality microphone. You might have air conditioners going or electronic noise. I had one guy where we couldn't figure out where the bad sounds were coming from, and it turned out it was his fish tank. Okay, it sounded like he was like underwater, like on sea, an underwater scuba show or something. So he had to turn off the pump while we recorded. Now, once we have determined that they have good enough sound quality and a good internet connection and a decent place to record that's not too noisy, we suggest they don't depend on Wi-Fi. Hardwired is always more reliable and better, but not always necessary if they have a really good, solid, and fast connection. Then I send them the full podcast details, and we will have them in the show notes for this episode. This is episode 350. This is our 350th episode. Yay! These instructions cover things like sample questions I'll ask them, and I reiterate the importance of sound quality. I give them a time estimate so they can schedule, and lots of other details you'll see when you check out the show notes for this episode. Then I ask them to give me 3 days and times they can do the recording. I tell them I can usually confirm one of them. I also tell them my time zone and that evenings and weekends are okay with me. Maybe it's not with you. It really doesn't matter. It only matters that you are clear about when you can do the recording so you aren't back and forth with 10 emails to get it booked. Now, some people use online calendar services to do the booking and collect the information. I use a good old-fashioned paper calendar. Never once in 44 years of business has it crashed on. And if you want to use an online service, I mean, Calendly is a popular one. And but I got to tell you, the only time I ever screwed up a booking with someone is when they made me use their online calendar, and the time zones were all messed up. It wasn't extremely clear about our different time zones, and we had to reschedule, which took several months for us to get our schedules lined back up. So I use a paper calendar. Now, here's another thing. Some people like to batch a whole bunch of recordings on one day. I don't think I've done more than 3 in a day. Average is 1 or 2. I try to accommodate when the guest is available, and also I don't want to sound stale or bored or tired from doing too many in one day. Now, after all that is done, I write up a skeleton of a script. I put in a blurb about the current guest, and I remind listeners how great the last guest was in case they missed it. I do my announcements, and I choose the sponsor message or product of mine that I want to promote, and then I do the 50-word introduction the guest has given me. Then I bring them on to, are you ready to screw? The Commute. All right. I don't do this on youth episodes, and if someone requests that I don't do it, then I don't do that little off color thing. But I only had one person out of 350 episodes that didn't want me to start that way. And of course, I don't do it for youth episodes. Anyway, let's say it's the day of the podcast. I send the guest a Zoom link. I used to use Skype, but Zoom's so much more reliable and consistent with good, clear audio. I turn on my recording system. If I have too many recordings on my backup SD cards, I format them, which wipes them clean. And by the way, I have 3 recorders going for each podcast, 1 on the computer and 2 backup digital recorders. I record the podcast, and then I immediately save the files and take one of the SD cards to my other computer where I do the editing. I rename it with the guest's name, and I back it up again so that up to the cloud, so that whatever happens, I don't lose this recording. Then I open Adobe Audition and pull up all the pieces of the program, the intro, the outro, the audio track, the guest's audio track, if I have one, and any pre-recorded commercials or sound effects. Also, if I've solicited an audio comment from somebody, I bring that in too. Well, let me take a sidebar here. It's not a bad idea to get recorded comments from Facebook group admins on your topic. I mean, this is kind of a $1 million tip, folks. If you play their comment on your podcast, they just might put your podcast in front of their group on Facebook to expose you to lots of people that never heard of you. The admin's kind of bragging about themselves, but they have control over a big group of people in their Facebook group. So that's a great idea. All right. So now this episode is not about audio editing, but just some things you want to consider. I do noise reduction to take away hiss or fan noises, stuff like that, or air conditioning noises. I do a thing called normalize, which gives you the best signal possible. And I know audio people are going to puke at my definition, right? But generally normalize helps you give the best signal you can have. Then I try to match the volume so that one person isn't too loud and the other too soft. The bulk of the editing time is taken up trying to fix up guest recordings. Even great guests have ums and ahs and pauses and audible breaths and lip smacks, and they bump their microphone and a whole host of things that make for a terrible recording. Sometimes I get to the point it would take me hours and hours to fix up a bad guest. So I make myself sound good, and they'll hear themselves say an and ah and lips. Here's a lip smack. You hear that all the time. So sometimes you just can't fix some of the things that they do wrong, but you shoot for the best quality you can, and then if it's a little bit less, you'll still be okay if you do everything else right. I told you about plosives earlier and hissing sounds and all that stuff. You can fix. The plosives are hard to fix, but noise reduction and things that are constant, like a fan noise, you can fix them pretty good in your software. Now, there's another thing. If the guest's voice is just really annoying, all right, either because their voice is just annoying or their microphone and internet connection is annoying, I try to use what they call EQ, which attempts to increase or decrease certain frequencies to make their voice sound more pleasing. All right, once I have the entire file edited, I save a high quality, which is a WAV file, .wav. That's on a PC. I think Macs, it's like AIFF, something like that. And then I save it to an MP3 file, which is a much smaller file size. But I still keep the high quality one, so that if I ever have to go back, I'm starting with really high quality, and then you reduce the file size for distribution as a podcast. Don't worry about this too much right now. If you get someone that knows what they're doing, they'll set all this up for you. I mean, we have a whole course on it too. If you want a course on it that also gets you a feature on Screw the Commute, just email me at orders@antion.com and I'll send you the link to it. So then I take the fully edited files, both WAV and MP3, and I back them up to Dropbox, to the cloud again. And then I mark that episode as done in all caps, and I look at my calendar and note down the date it is supposed to go live. That's it. And even though I breeze through the editing part, that's the most time-consuming part. I had someone here in the office just today who asked me why I didn't turn the editing over to some low-priced labor. Well, the answer is I believe in really high quality, and a low-priced editor is just not going to know even a high-priced editor is not going to know what to leave in, what to edit out. And by the time I have to check all their work, I could have done it myself with less hassle and no cash outlay. So that's why I do it, and it doesn't cost me anything. Now, if you have someone really sharp who knows how you would handle virtually all the edits that you'll possibly run into, then great, go ahead and have them edit. But I can assure you, you'll be giving up some quality by letting someone else edit. All right, back to guests. Now, for most of you, eventually you're going to run out of guests. If enough time has passed, you can invite back some of the best guests you've already had. I do that all the time. And even if they said the same thing, okay, people probably won't notice. But just in case, when I'm a guest on other shows, I always give them different topics to pick from, so it's always fresh information when I try to be a guest. But if you've got hundreds of episodes of your podcast, nobody will notice if 100 episodes ago you had a guest that said about the same thing. People I know doing radio interviews have been back to shows. I mean, I've been back to certain shows 13 times. And some have been back 40 times that I know. And they said the exact same thing, and the host was thrilled because they have new listeners all the time. So when you do run out of guests, it's time to check out other similar podcasts and see who they've had as a guest. You can then approach those people with I mean, with that method, you should be able to get guests for a long time to come. And then again, you can start repeating other great guests that you've had. You can also ask other podcast hosts if they would recommend any guests that were especially good. And we use the National Speakers Association, who's got a couple thousand people with big mouths that got plenty to say and know how to say it. So that's another source that you can look at. You don't have to be a member to go look at their member directory and see if there's anybody that might be a good guest for your show. All right, here's some miscellaneous tips. Maybe I should have addressed this earlier, but it's the topic of why you need good sound. You would think it would be obvious to podcast hosts, but I can assure you it's not. First, people will not put up with poor quality sound and will leave and unsubscribe from your podcast. Even further, if you start with poor sound and then people try to listen on a train or while working out and through tiny earbuds, they'll ditch your podcast and listen to someone else's. Your recording room has to be quiet, or you must be willing to explain away bad or crazy sounds. I mean, I'm always explaining my dog's barking and such, because most of the time I've been doing this podcast, we've had, earlier there was 20 to 30 dogs living here when my trainers were having their new house made, built. And then I have my German Shepherds here. So yeah, they'll bark sometimes. So you can either edit it out or just make fun of it and go with it. I'm pretty laid back, so I'm more likely to go with it because people know that's my personality. Now, most podcasts are pre-recorded, which gives you a chance to fix any major screw-ups. But the more you have to fix in editing, rather than recording cleanly right off the bat, the more time-consuming each episode will be to prepare. And some things you just can't fix, like those plosives are very difficult. So work on your recording area as best you can, and you'll save tons of time and you'll keep the quality higher. Now, some guest troubles you'll have are guests that go on and on after they made their point. I have that trouble more than guests that only provide yes or no answers, which that's even worse. Many of my guests are professional public speakers, and they have no trouble rattling off answers and stories and giving good voice inflection, and they certainly got plenty to talk about. But if you don't have really experienced guests, you're going to have to get better at two things. One, booking better guests, okay? Or two, improving your hosting skills to keep things moving nicely. Now, I try to keep the language PG so I don't have to tell Larry, who puts this up on the internet for me, to mark the episode explicit in iTunes. And I've also been known to edit out bad words guests have slipped up and said, and I don't even ask them for permission to do it. I just do it because explicit will mean usually less people will hear your podcast. I know there are exceptions like Gary V, but that's a rare exception right there. I do solo trainings like this one almost every Monday. Now, it's not a Monday because this is our 350th episode. It landed on a Wednesday. But once in a while, I'll have one of my employees or contractors chime in on a Monday training. Like I had Mark Bullard recently talking about work-life balance and things like that. So you can just, as long as you can make it make sense for your audience and why they're on the podcast, then you'll be fine. But if you start they never know what's going to be on, and it could be a bunch of random stuff, people won't be as inclined to listen because they never know what they're going to get. So it's better that if you can pick a topic and stick to it and make the guests conform to that topic, you'll build a bigger audience. Now, staying organized. Well, here's some of the things I do. I mean, I have a running list of actual guests that have been recorded and edited. I have next to that what I promoted on that episode and what day it went live. And I have a document that has a bunch of text describing each of my products, so I can just cut and paste that text into my script for the sponsor message. I have the guest information that's included in the show. the show notes of the episode, and I have a slightly different version if I have a couple or multiple guests, which I don't do that very often. Usually it's one-on-one guests. And I also have a list of potential guests and when I reached out to them. So folks, before we finish up here, I want to tell you about my mentor program. It's the longest running, most successful, most unique ever in the field of internet and digital marketing. It's been running over 20 years, and it's unique in the fact that guys at my level were charging $50,000 or $100,000 to put you into the program, and then I knew a lot of these people, they're ripoffs, and they wouldn't even help you once they got all that money up front. So I kind of turned the internet marketing guru world on its head back in those days by charging an entry fee relatively low compared to what the money guys like me were worth to help you. And then for me to get my $50,000, you have to make $200,000. So people just love this, and 1,700 students later, it's still running strong. So it's unique in the fact that it's all one-on-one. Most people at my level won't even talk to you at all, let alone teach you anything. You have an immersion weekend at my retreat center where you actually live in the house with me for an immersion weekend. Of course, this will be after the pandemic, but we don't usually let anybody come till at least they go through about 4 months of training anyway, so they're not deer in the headlights the whole weekend. We have a TV studio where we shoot video for you. You come back on a separate trip where there's just you, and we shoot video all day stuff for you. So it's just very unique and successful, and I've been running a long time. There's no lawsuits. People don't charge back because I take care of people. And that's how I've stayed in business for 44 years now. Okay, 26 of them on the internet. So that's greatinternetmarketingtraining.com. We have a special deal for this 350th celebration where you get an extra VIP day here worth $5,000 where it's just you, in addition to all the other beautiful things of the mentor program. So check that out at greatinternetmarketingtraining.com. And then also, if you're in my mentor program, you get a scholarship to my school, which you can either use yourself for extra training or gift to someone in your life. And I'll tell you what, there's people making money within a month of starting the school. See, and they're saving tons of money if they happen to be in business already. Maybe it's not a young person that's just graduating. Maybe it's a person that's in business and wants to expand their reach on a shoestring budget. Well, the school is perfect for that. And you get a scholarship if you're in my mentor program. All right, so that's the story, folks. So I really want you to do a podcast. If you carefully listen to this and go back and listen to episode 139, which tells you what's going on behind the scenes of the podcast, you can have a great marketing vehicle for your business that people will listen to because they can do it while they're doing something else. All right, folks, so that's it. Happy 350th to Screw the Commute podcast. I hope to see you taking advantage of our big sale that's you'll get via email. So make sure you get on my email list if you grab that automation book at screwthecommute.com/automate free, you'll be on my email list and you'll get the coupon codes and everything for our super big sale going on right now. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll catch you on the next episode. See you later.